I collapsed in my community garden on a Tuesday morning in August, right between the tomato stakes and the sweet corn, with my face against the warm dirt, and no one around but a sparrow that kept hopping closer like it was trying to figure out what I was. That's the last clear thing I remember. Everything after came in fragments. The hospital called my son 39 times over the next 4 days. He never once picked up. When I finally opened my eyes, it wasn't my son's face I saw first. It was Hazel's, my neighbor from 2 houses down, 67 years old, asleep in a recliner chair with her reading glasses still on her nose, and a half-eaten pack of peanut butter crackers on the armrest. She'd been there 4 days straight. Not my son, not my daughter-in-law. Hazel, who'd been watering my plants and collecting my mail and calling me every Sunday evening since my husband passed 2 years ago. Before I tell you the rest of this, and there is more, much more, if you believe family should show up when it truly counts, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Silver Revenge. I'd love to know where you're watching from, your city, your country. It matters more than you might think. And I should say up front, some details of this story have been adjusted for privacy. The emotions, the choices, the betrayal at the center of it, those are all real. My name is Norma. I'm 68 years old. I retired from teaching 4th grade 11 years ago, and I have lived in the same house in Ashwood, Ohio for 31 years. My husband passed from pancreatic cancer 26 months ago. We had 1 child together, a son. He and his wife live 40 minutes away with my 8-year-old grandson, Cooper. 40 minutes. I used to think that was close enough. I don't think that anymore. The morning it happened, I'd gone to my community garden plot early to beat the heat. I had 4 raised beds. Tomatoes, green beans, zucchini, and a little patch of zinnias. I grew for no reason other than that I liked the color. I'd been going to that garden for 11 years. Half the people there knew me by first name. The other half just called me the one with the zinnias. I was tying up a tomato plant when the pain started. Not in my chest. That surprised me later when the doctors explained it. It started in my jaw, then my left arm, then a heaviness behind my breastbone I had never felt before, like someone had set a stack of books there and kept adding more. I sat down on the ground. I thought I was just overheated. I told myself to breathe. I don't remember anything after that. What I was told later, a woman named Bernice, who gardened 3 plots down, found me face down in the dirt 17 minutes later. She called 911 immediately. She stayed with me until the ambulance came, holding my hand even though we had never spoken more than 20 words to each other in 11 years. The paramedics said I'd had a massive stroke. They said if Bernice had found me 20 minutes later, the outcome would have been very different. The hospital got my son's number from my wallet. They called him 39 times. I know the exact number because the charge nurse, a steady woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense bun, told me herself when I finally came around on day 4. We made 39 attempts to reach your emergency contact, she said, her voice careful and practiced. We were unable to get through. 39 times. And then Hazel stirred in her recliner. And I understood everything before my brain could properly form the thought. Hazel had been gardening 2 plots over from Bernice that morning. She'd seen the ambulance. She didn't know it was me at first, but she asked. And when a paramedic confirmed it, she climbed into her car and followed the ambulance to the hospital. She hadn't left since. I'm her emergency contact, she'd told the desk nurse when she arrived. It wasn't true, but no one questioned it. You've been out 4 days, she told me now, her voice breaking just slightly at the edges. You scared the living daylights out of me, Norma. I squeezed her hand. I couldn't speak yet. My throat was still raw from the intubation tube. But I held her hand and I thought, where is my son? The doctors came and went. The neurologist explained the stroke, the clot, the procedure. My prognosis was good. Remarkable, he said, given my age and the severity. I would need rehabilitation, physical therapy, careful monitoring. But I was going to recover. I should have felt only gratitude. Instead, the question kept circling. Where was my son? On day 5, when I could finally talk, I asked Hazel directly. She picked up her phone slowly. The way someone does when they already know what they're about to show you isn't good. He posted things, she said, while you were in here. She handed me the phone. My son's Instagram was public. His wife had always wanted some kind of lifestyle presence online. I'd never followed him. Too complicated, my husband used to say. We were stuck in the 20th century, the two of us, but there it was on Hazel's screen, clear as anything. The first photo, my son and 6 of his friends on a rooftop bar in Nashville, all of them in matching baseball caps, holding drinks up toward the camera, grinning. Posted Tuesday evening, the same day I was unconscious in an ambulance. The caption said, "Bachelor weekend, no calls, no emails, fully offline. This is exactly what we needed." Fully offline. I had to read it twice. Fully offline, while the hospital was calling him 39 times over 4 days. Hazel scrolled. The next one. Thursday afternoon, my son at a country music venue. Arms around the group, mid-law. Caption, "No stress, just good people and good music. Needed this more than I knew." No stress. I was the stress. I understood that immediately, without having to work at it. I was the obligation, the phone call he'd been dreading, the wait he had decided. Just this once, just this long weekend, to set down and walk away from. I handed the phone back. I looked at the ceiling for a long moment. "He had service," I said. "Yes," Hazel said. "He got the messages." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I lay there and let the pieces fall into their places. And they arranged themselves into a shape I recognized. Because I'd been seeing the outline of it for 2 years. I'd just been refusing to name it. My husband died in April of 2023. My son was there for the funeral. He took 2 days off, said the right things to the right people, was composed and appropriate. Everyone told me how well he was holding it together. What they didn't see was that he was gone by Thursday morning, back to the office. "You'll be okay, Mom," he said from the front porch. "We'll check in soon." I wasn't okay, but I said I would be. After that, the visits shrank. The first summer after, he came twice. By winter, it was monthly phone calls, then sporadic ones, then texts. "Busy week, talk soon." The last time I'd seen Cooper in person before the stroke was 11 weeks earlier, at Easter. My daughter-in-law had somewhere to be by 2 o'clock, so they left right after the meal. Cooper didn't finish his Easter basket. He left it on my kitchen table. I kept it there. I still don't entirely understand why. I just couldn't bring myself to put it away. 3 months before the stroke, my son called me on a Sunday. Unusual enough that I sat down when I saw his name on the screen. He told me about the Nashville trip. Kyle's bachelor party, 4 days, just the guys. He said he probably wouldn't be reachable much, trying to actually unplug for once. I said I understood. I wished him a good trip. I hung up and sat in the kitchen my husband and I had shared for 31 years, and I listened to the clock on the wall. It was the only sound in the house. Lying in that hospital bed on day 5, I finally stopped stitching excuses over the pattern and looked at it plainly. My son wasn't too busy to be present. He had made a series of deliberate choices, one after another over 2 years, and each one moved him a little further from me and a little closer to a life where I simply wasn't part of the picture. Nashville was the clearest example yet, but it wasn't an exception. It was the truth of what we had become. On day 6, Hazel brought me something. She'd gone to my house to pick up clothes and toiletries for a longer stay. She checked my mailbox while she was there. She came back with a large envelope in her hand. Her face was pale in a way I hadn't seen before. "You need to see this," she said. I knew before she handed it to me that it wasn't good. The return address was a law firm I didn't recognize, Henderson and Crane, Estate and Elder Care Services. The envelope was addressed to me. Inside was a document, a financial power of attorney form, several pages, printed on official letterhead, and halfway through it in the section designating the agent, my son's name, already typed in, neat and formal. The signature line at the bottom was blank. He needed my signature. And this thought moved through me slowly and cold. He was working toward a moment when he could claim I'd given it, without fully understanding what I was signing. There was a cover letter addressed to my son but mailed to my address. The letter summarized the document's scope. Full financial authority, access to all accounts, authority to make decisions regarding real property, including sale of residence. I set the letter down on the hospital blanket. Behind the cover letter was a handwritten note in my son's handwriting, a short list, written to himself or perhaps to his wife. It said, "Mom's been alone too long. Mentioned confusion dates twice this spring. Check with Bernice at Garden. Does she seem okay? Get statements from people who've seen her recently. Better to move her before something actually happens." Something had happened. I was in a hospital bed with tubes and wires and a neurologist's very careful handwriting in my chart. The number of calls my son had made about it was 0. But he had been calling other people. Bernice came to see me on day 7. She brought a small potted herb from her garden. "Mint," she said. "Good for recovery." We talked for a few minutes, and then she said she wanted to be upfront about something. "Your son called me," she said, 2 weeks ago. He got my number from the Garden Association directory, he said. He asked if I'd noticed you seeming off, confused about what day it was, forgetful, whether I'd ever seen you stumble or get disoriented. "What did you tell him?" "I told him you were the sharpest person in that garden," she said, "that half the time you remembered what I'd planted 3 rows over before I did." She paused. He seemed disappointed. He was building something, the handwritten note, the phone calls, the power of attorney already bearing his name. He was assembling testimony, laying a foundation, painting a picture of a woman who couldn't manage her own affairs, a woman who needed someone else to step in and manage her finances, her property, her life, a woman who couldn't object to signing a document because she'd already been established through other people's accounts as not entirely reliable. Hazel told me 2 hours later that he had called her too. Same questions, same careful concern in his voice. Did I seem confused? Had I mentioned forgetting things? Was I managing all right on my own? She had told him I was fine, better than fine. She had told him I'd helped her reorganize her entire kitchen pantry in March and had remembered exactly where everything was 6 weeks later when she was looking for something. He said he just worried about you being alone at your age, Hazel told me. I thought he was being a good son. He was not being a good son. That night, alone in the hospital room, I lay very still and thought about what I was going to do. The power of attorney was in my bedside drawer. The handwritten note was there too. I had Hazel's account and Bernice's account. I had 39 missed calls in the hospital's documentation. I had stamped Instagram posts. He thought I was lying in a bed somewhere, too grateful and too worn down to ask hard questions. He thought the next time he saw me, I'd be soft with relief that he'd finally shown up. He had significantly underestimated his mother. The next morning, I asked Hazel to call my attorney. Her name is Miss Farrell. She's handled my family's legal affairs for 14 years, managed my husband's estate, helped me update my will after he died. She came to the hospital herself, which I hadn't expected. She sat down, opened her notepad, and listened without interrupting for 22 minutes while I laid out everything. When I finished, she looked at me for a long moment. "How are you feeling, mentally? Are you clear?" "I just outlined an attempted financial manipulation while recovering from a stroke," I said. "You tell me." She almost smiled. "I'm scheduling a formal cognitive evaluation through the hospital before we proceed." Not because I doubt you, because we need it officially documented so that anything he attempts afterward is dead on arrival. We made a plan. Miss Farrell would draft a complete revision of my will. She would also arrange a meeting, framed as a routine estate update following a medical event. My son would come expecting to discuss what he stood to inherit. He would discover something else entirely. "One question," she said before she left. "Do you want to leave him anything?" I thought about it. I thought about Cooper, who was 8 years old and had nothing to do with any of this. I thought about the pasta basket on my kitchen table. "Leave Cooper a trust," I said. "Enough for college and then some. With you as trustee, his parents get no access and no oversight until he turns 18. And your son." I was quiet for a moment. $1, I said. Her pens stopped. "Symbolic," I said, "so there's no question I simply forgot. I want it clear that I made a deliberate choice." She wrote it down. My son called 11 days after I was admitted. I was home by then. Hazel had driven me, helped me get settled, stocked my refrigerator without being asked. I was sitting in my husband's old armchair when the phone rang. "Mom," his voice came out in a rush. "Mom, I just heard. I am so sorry. I had no idea it was this serious. The guys mentioned something and I checked my messages and..." He had no idea. 39 calls over 4 days. "I thought maybe you were just under the weather," he continued. "The cell service in Nashville, you know how it gets." He had posted to Instagram 4 times from that same location. I let him talk. I said very little. "Yes, I'm home. Yes, I'm recovering well. You can come see me. Thursday works." He and my daughter-in-law arrived at 11 o'clock. They didn't bring Cooper. "He had a spelling test," my son said quickly. The explanation arrived before I could ask. They came dressed like they had somewhere to be afterward, and they stayed 22 minutes. In those 22 minutes, my son asked twice how I was feeling, and spent the rest of the visit describing the Nashville trip. How much he'd needed it, how brutal work had been. Near the end, slipped in like an afterthought, he asked about my estate paperwork. Just to make sure everything was current after this health scare. Very casual, very reasonable. I told him Miss Farrell had already scheduled a meeting for Thursday at 2. He brightened, covered it with concern, and they left. Thursday morning, I put on the blue dress my husband had always said made my eyes look 20 years younger. Hazel drove me. I walked into Miss Farrell's office, feeling more grounded than I had in months. My son and daughter-in-law arrived exactly on time, both in sharp clothes, both carrying the careful posture of people who expected to leave with something. They stopped when they saw Hazel seated beside me. "Why is she here?" my daughter-in-law said. "Because I asked her to be," I said. "Sit down." They sat. "Before we discuss the will," I said, "there are a few things I want to say directly." My son started to speak. I held up one hand. "The hospital called you 39 times," I said. 4 days, not once did you pick up." "Mom, I already explained. You posted to Instagram 4 times during those same 4 days. I laid the printed screenshots on the table between us. Timestamps clear, location tagged, his face grinning up from each one. You had service, you had Wi-Fi, you had your phone in your hand, you made a choice." The room went very quiet. "I also know about the calls you made before you left, to Bernice at the community garden, to Hazel." I looked at him steadily, asking whether I seemed confused, whether I was managing, whether anyone had concerns about my ability to live on my own. My daughter-in-law looked at the table. I reached into the folder and placed the power of attorney document between us. "And I know about this. Your name is already printed in it." My signature line was blank. It was mailed to my house, addressed to me, but written to you. He stared at the document. His face had gone the color of old ash. Miss Farrell placed a copy of the cognitive evaluation on the table. Mrs. Norma completed a full evaluation with Dr. Mercer at Ashwood Regional 4 days ago. She passed with exceptional results, Her legal capacity is documented and ironclad. This revised will is entirely valid and entirely her own. We can explain the document, my son started. I'm not asking for an explanation, I said. Not harshly, simply. I'm asking you to understand something. I looked at him the way I used to look at students who had gotten a hard answer wrong and knew it. Not to punish, but because they needed to actually hear it. Your father died 26 months ago. You stayed 4 days. I handled everything else alone. The paperwork, his belongings, the silence of the house at night. I did it alone because you had things to get back to, and I told myself you were grieving in your own way. I gave you that. You didn't earn it, but I gave it to you anyway. He was very still. Cooper left his Easter basket on my table. You were in such a hurry to leave that neither of you noticed. I have looked at that basket every day for 11 weeks. No one spoke. Miss Farrell opened the will and read through it with the deliberate calm of someone who has done this before. The trust for Cooper. $300,000, no parental access until 18. Miss Farrell as sole trustee. My daughter-in-law leaned forward at the amount, then leaned back when she understood the conditions. The charitable bequests, the community garden fund, a scholarship in my husband's name at the school where I'd taught, the local Meals on Wheels chapter. $50,000 to Hazel. My son's head came up fast. She followed an ambulance she didn't even know was mine, I said. She slept in a hospital chair for 4 days. She is family. Then Miss Farrell read the final line, $1 to my son. He stared at the page for a long time. When he looked up, his voice was quieter. Younger, somehow, than it had sounded in years. Is there anything I can do? He asked. Be a good father to Cooper, I said. That's the only thing that matters to me now. Not between you and me, but for him. Show up for him the way you didn't show up for me. He nodded. He didn't fight it. I think some part of him had been waiting for this. Some part that had known for a long time that a reckoning was coming and had been too tired of avoiding it to fight when it finally arrived. They left. I heard his car pull out of the parking lot through Miss Farrell's window. Hazel put her hand over mine on the conference table. Neither of us said anything. There wasn't anything left to say. That was 7 weeks ago. I sold the house. It was too large and too full of an echo I couldn't fill alone, and 31 years of living deserved to be carried somewhere smaller, more deliberate, more mine. I bought a cottage 3 blocks from Hazel, close to the garden, close to the church I'd been attending since before my son was born. Moving day was the first Saturday in October. Hazel and Bernice and 4 women from church helped me carry things in. Someone brought a casserole. Someone else brought tulips. It took 8 hours, and it felt like exactly the right kind of work. Cooper came on a Saturday afternoon 3 weeks later. Hazel brought him. I didn't ask how it was arranged, and she didn't explain. He stood in my small front yard and looked at the porch with the hanging ferns and said quietly, "It's cozy, Grandma." I pulled him into my arms and held on for a long moment, and he held on too. We baked chocolate chip cookies that afternoon. He told me about his teacher, about his best friend at school, about swimming lessons he'd started in September. He showed me a drawing he'd made in art class. A house with a garden, and a small figure with white hair standing next to the tallest plant. "That's you," he said, pointing. I put it on the refrigerator before he finished his second cookie. It's still there. He's visited 3 times since. I don't ask about the logistics. I just make sure there's something to bake when he comes, and I make sure the door is always unlocked when I know he's on his way. I volunteer twice a week at the garden now, helping with the children's plot they started this fall. 3rd and 4th graders from the school up the road. They call me Mrs. Norma. They ask me why zinnias grow so bright, and I tell them it's because they don't waste energy wondering whether they're worth it. They just grow. Hazel and I walk every morning. 3 miles, depending on the weather. We talk about everything and nothing. She has become the person I want to call when something good happens, because that is what family actually is, the person you reach for when you want to share something that matters. My son has called 4 times since the meeting, short calls, careful around the edges. We speak around what happened rather than through it. I don't know if that will change. I have stopped waiting for it too, which is not the same as closing the door. It is just refusing to stand in the doorway anymore, holding it open with my own body, hoping. There is a plane ticket on my desk. Seattle in April. Pike Place Market, the coastline. The mountains my husband always wanted to see and we never quite got to. I'm going alone. I am 68 years old, and I have never taken a trip entirely by myself, and I am more ready than I have been for anything in recent memory. I used to be afraid of taking up too much space, afraid that if I asked for too much or needed too much or simply existed too loudly, people would step away. So I made myself smaller, easier, less. I told myself that was love. It wasn't. It was fear dressed up in the clothes of generosity. The stroke took things from me, temporarily. Steadiness on my feet, some words that still arrive slower than I'd like, the full strength in my left hand when I'm tired. Was something I hadn't realized I'd been losing for years, the clear I cannot spend whatever time I have left making myself convenient for people who are using that convenience against me. I am not an asset to be transferred. I am not a house to be sold out from under me. I am Norma. I taught 4th grade for 22 years. I grew a zinnia garden from seeds I saved by hand. I love my grandson with a force that would surprise people who only see a quiet woman in a blue dress. I survived a stroke in a garden in August because a woman named Bernice happened to look up from her kale at exactly the right moment, and because Hazel followed an ambulance on a hunch. The people who show up, those are your people. Everything else is just biology. If you're sitting somewhere right now, feeling like you have become a convenience to people who should have made you a priority, I want you to hear this from someone who learned it the hardest way possible. You are not required to keep that door open. You are allowed to decide who gets access to your life, your home, your time, your love. Blood is not a contract. It is not an automatic reason to accept whatever is offered and call it enough. You deserve someone who would follow an ambulance without knowing who was inside. I found mine at 68 after a stroke, after everything. It is not too late. It is never too late. Go find your people, and in the meantime, plant something. Something bright. Something that doesn't wait for permission to grow.